Welcome to Season 3 of the Dance Reel podcast. I'm Kate Histon. Before we dive into this episode, I would love a favour from you. To help us bring some wonderful guests to our show and grow, please subscribe or follow this channel, like, comment and share with a friend. That would be a great help. Thank you so much. This episode was sponsored by Master Dancer Mindset. Know yourself, be yourself and express yourself on and off the stage. Today, I am joined by one of Australia's most versatile and talented artists, Josef Brown. Josef's career has spanned classical ballet, contemporary dance, musical theatre, television and film. He trained at the McDonald College of the Arts and the Australian Ballet School before becoming a soloist with the Australian Ballet Company and later a principal with international companies including the Sydney Dance Company. His stage and screen work made him a household name, from award-winning performances in musical theatre to major roles in television drama like Dance Academy, Spartacus and Neighbours. Beyond performing, Josef has contributed as a writer, producer, choreographer and advocate for the arts. Today he continues to shape the industry as the co-founder and managing director of the Library Aesthetic Dance Media, creating a powerful platform for dance and movement on screen. Welcome, Josef Brown, to my podcast.
Hi, Kate. Thank you.
It is such an honour and a privilege to have you on here. You are a prolific person in the dance industry, having gone from professional dancer, model, actor, businessman, entrepreneur, still in our industry and shaping and changing it in beautifully positive ways. So I'm really looking forward to diving into the life of you.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Kate. That's such a lovely introduction. It's such an honour to be on your podcast and finally get to chat with you, actually.
Yeah, because we actually have met over phone years back when I had my dance school and I had my dancewear shop and I was selling MDM dancewear.
Yep, up in Byron Bay.
That's right.
Yep.
This will be exciting. For our listeners today, we always love to start with what was your upbringing like in dance? Where did you start and how did you get to your first big gig in the industry?
I had a different story than most dancers that start young, but I probably had a story that's a little bit similar to a lot of guys because I started later. It wasn't easy to find dance in the area that I grew up. Grew up on the sort of the outer fringes of sort of northern Sydney in Asquith, and the school that I went to at the time, I think it's changed a lot now, but at the time it didn't have arts to speak of at all, really. There was a bit of painting, maybe a bit of music, but nothing really. And I was always the weird child. I was always a little bit of the weirdo, a little bit different, a little bit off, really struggled to fit in, really struggled to find a sense of belonging. And I ended up connecting with some girls that were at the girls' high school because I was at the boys' high school. So this is quite late. This is like year 9. And they started sort of dragging us over to do some plays at the girls' school. And I was terrible. I was absolutely terrible. I'd get on stage and I would freeze. I would absolutely freeze up. So I was never good on stage and I wasn't good as a performer when I first got going, but I loved the people. I loved the atmosphere. I loved that it was a place where difference and uniqueness and quirkiness was celebrated and that you could be a little bit outside the mold and you weren't just having to fit in and play sports and be a guy and, you know, drink beer on the weekends or whatever. I just really loved that atmosphere. And then they asked me and a mate to come and do some Friday night jazz, which was the extension of that. And there was the same group of girls that we'd become really comfortable with. And one of them I really wanted to kiss at the time. So I was like, yes, okay, we'll go. And I'd got into breakdancing at about the same time as it was the first time breakdancing had come up in the sort of mid-80s. And so I was about that 15, 16 mark. And it had come to Australia via some films, as you know, American films. And, you know, we were desperately trying to find any tiny little thing we could watch on breakdancing. And I actually became a breakdancing instructor at the Hornsby Village Fitness Gym. And it was probably some of the first breakdance instructing in Australia. There was me and about 5 others, and we'd get other kids in, and we were like a week, if that, ahead of everybody else in terms of what we knew, that we knew just a little bit more than the people that we were teaching. And that's how that also started. So then when I got asked to do this Friday night jazz class, I was like, okay, let's just go and try it. And then by the end of year 10, having done that and explored that and been on stage a little bit more, I was still terrible, still terrified. I was always a really anxious performer. And then I went to the McDonald College for year 11 and 12. Dance was the only thing, or the arts, sorry, sort of, and acting at the time was kind of the only thing I had any kind of aspiration for. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I still hadn't sort of found myself and found a sort of vision and sort of pathway, but fame was big in the 80s, of course. And so I was molded by that, and I went along to McDonald College of the Arts, and I was really lucky that the teachers, Anne McDonald at the time, like, she was just fabulous. She stretched me around and pulled me and got me to jump on the spot and basically helped me, dragged me out of where I was and said, yes, we'll give you a go, but ballet was compulsory. And so I had to do ballet. After about a month, I left and I went back to the Asquith Boys High School because I just thought, this isn't me. What am I doing? I'm a fish out of water. I'm so uncomfortable. What am I doing ballet for? I have no idea what ballet is. Never done ballet. I'd never seen a ballet. Everything felt wrong. It was a different sort of socioeconomic group to the people that I'd sort of grown up with as well. And I guess I felt slightly uncomfortable. I didn't feel deserving. I didn't feel deserving of where I was, to be honest. And so I went back to the Asquith Boys High School, public school, all boys. Threw myself in. I spent one day there, one day. And I went, this is wrong. This is more wrong than where I was. And I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I didn't want that. That's all I knew. I was like, that. I knew instantly this was just not for me. And I went straight back to the McDonald College, and they were so lovely. They just wrapped their arms around me and welcomed me back. And then that was it. I never looked back again. I just went, I have no idea where this is going to lead, but I'm just going to throw myself into it 100% and work it out, because I just know I don't want to go the direction I was going back there, and I didn't want to be there. So I needed to create something new. And I was terrified most of the time when I look back at it now. But I was also kind of ballsy, too, when I think back. And I think it's this sort of conflict between being really ballsy and then having to live up to that ballsiness. And that kind of makes you sort of terrified. And the McDonald College was fantastic for me. I was really fortunate. I found some fantastic teachers. They really embraced me because I was a boy, of course. And I think that's one of the things every dance studio is really, when boys come, it's like, oh my God, thank God we've got some boys. And so you do get treated differently. I think it does make you feel a little bit special, but there's also a lot of pressure on as well. And I just spent 2 years at McDonald College, then did a year of full time because I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I kind of had this inkling by then. I'd sort of fallen in love with ballet. It took about 6 months. And I always say that it wasn't ballet per se that I fell in love with straight away. It was the people. It was the people that were doing ballet. They just had this incredible vision of what they wanted to do with their lives. And they had a very clear understanding of how they were going to achieve it. They were going to do this. They were going to do these exams. This was going to get them into this school. Then they were going to get into a company. It was going to start at quarter ballet, choreography, soloist, leading soloist, senior artist, principal. Like it's so structured. It's almost military in a way. And for someone like me, a young man, not knowing what you wanted to do, it's a really easy hierarchical structure to actually latch onto and go, oh, wow, that feels clear. That feels cleaner. So I really gravitated to that. And then the discipline and the structure, which I really needed in my life. I was a latchkey kid, parents divorced, not coming home to 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, way too much freedom. Growing up, running around the bush on my motorbike, I was just like, no, I needed structure, and ballet gave me everything. And then it just exploded into this world of artistry and emotion and storytelling. And I just never looked back. I just fell in love with ballet. I'd fallen in love with the people, and then I fell in love with ballet. And then Australian Ballet School, 2 years at the Australian Ballet School, and I got accepted into the company. And then I was kind of on my way, I guess.
That is incredible. I love how reflective and articulate you are in knowing your journey, what your roots were and what your motivators were. That's really cool.
Oh, thank you, Kate.
When you got to the Australian Ballet School itself, what was that transition like?
It was a massive culture shock, Kate. So I came from quite a low to mid socioeconomic area, very football, meat pies, beer, sort of, if you know what I mean, outer fringes, on the bush. It was a very different group of people and atmosphere that I was working in, and I really remade myself. I'm pretty sure I changed my voice and the way I spoke, the way I acted. I ended up changing my name. My real name's not Josef Brown. That was actually, I had a name change. I actually changed it to Joseph Christensen. So when I started in the ballet for a few years, I was known as Joseph Christensen. That's a whole other story we're not going to get into. But and then I ended up changing it back to Josef Brown because Brown's my original name. But for a few years there, I was known as a different name. It's like I needed to become a character that felt like it fit inside this world, because I didn't fit inside this world, and I couldn't work out how to fit inside this world without creating a little bit of a character for myself. And that character was able to then fit inside this world. And so sometimes I always say that sometimes my mask was when I was off stage, and the mask came off when I was on stage. That was me being most true to myself. Even in a character, that was where I was able to express myself and be most honest about who I was, my feelings, my energy. Particularly my energy. I was able to be most honest about my energy when I was off stage. There was more of a mask, I think. And as I was trying to work out who this person was that existed, and I was really homesick when I first went to the Australian Ballet School. I was desperately homesick. And I felt really lonely. And again, it was connecting with some people, some really good friends that I care for and love to this day. And it was those people again. It was the people that got me through it. I just found this group that all of a sudden accepted me, that I loved. I found them fascinating and interesting and funny and artistic. And I just wanted to be around them. I just want to be around interesting, artistic, quirky people that just kind of fascinate me and bring out that curiosity that I love in the world. They would and challenge me. I like to be challenged. So it was them. And then I got comfortable, and then I was able to take that character and just keep working hard.
Oh, I love that. Your peer group's really important, especially in those formative years before turning into an adult.
Support networks, I think, it's something we don't talk. If you look at what sport are doing now and how they've transitioned over the last 3 to 4 years, every time they come on, I was just watching the US Open tennis, and every one of them talk about being part of a team. Even though tennis is one of the most solo activities you can do, you're out there, for 3 hours, 5 hours by yourself hitting a tennis ball, but every one of them talk about how they're part of a team, and that's what gets them through, and the support network of being part of a team. I've seen that change over the last 3 to 5 years when you see sports people talk, and even artists too, talking more of sort of their team than their team that's around them, surrounding yourself with really good people, because you need it. It's absolutely crucial. Nobody does this alone. You don't do life alone, and you don't do the arts alone. And having the support network is what gets you through those really tough times. And they are going to be tough times. They have to be, because you're constantly putting yourself in challenging positions. And if you're not really doing what you're supposed to be doing as an artist. You have to be giving yourself micro traumas, challenging yourself to push past your comfort zone. So you are going to feel discomfort, and you have to accept that. But if you push too far, it's like going to the gym. And if you push too far, you tear something, and now you need to be rebuilding and you need to heal, and you need people around you to help you do that. And sometimes you need people around you to help you recognize when you've pushed too far and you're in trauma and you need healing. So
that's very articulate. So when you were training in the Australian Ballet School and you had those moments of doubt, and as a performer, having your peers, would you say that's a major thing that helped you with your mindset, with your relationship with yourself, with stepping out and then having that courage then you went into the company?
Yeah, I think it's a hard one for me to say, because to be honest, I wasn't aware of mindset back 30 years ago when I was dancing, and I wish I had been. I wish someone had talked to me about this, and I'm so glad that people like you are talking about it now for younger dancers, because I think it is so critical to be self-aware of those things. I was not self-aware in this way. I was basically just bumbling through and pushing hard. I was that quintessential first one in, last one out, work harder than everybody else, and hopefully your body doesn't break, and hopefully your mind doesn't break. And I built a resilience, but there's a cost to that. There's a cost in loneliness. I think sometimes there was a cost in terms of injuries that came later in my life. My ballet career ended because of injury, primarily. I just couldn't sustain the way I was working because I was just pushing through rather than being self-aware. And the company at that time didn't really have what they have now, this amazing health team that the Australian Ballet have. They didn't have that at the time, unfortunately. They had a lovely masseuse and people that helped you with gym, but not someone that could help you before the injury happened.
Yes.
And they could see what you needed before you realized it. And that's what you need. You need people who are older and wiser who can see where that's going, that way of working before you get there. Because otherwise you just think you're fantastic until the worst happens.
Yeah.
And then it's devastating. And that was devastating for me at the time because I couldn't do ballet anymore. My Achilles tendon just wouldn't allow me to do that.
Oh my goodness. Can I ask how old you were when that happened?
So I'd been with the company for about 5 or 6 years. So I must have been somewhere around sort of mid-20s. At the end of the day, you transition and you adapt. And this is something that I've always done in my career. I have a very adaptive mindset. So I just go, okay, this isn't working. And I transitioned into something else. So I went overseas at the time. I basically took a leave of absence. And I was supposed sabbatical. It was, I think I called it at the time. And I went over to a company in Turkey and I worked in Turkey for a year. I was supposed to just go for 6 months. It was a contemporary dance company. They were in Ankara in the middle of Anatolia, the first contemporary dance company in Turkey. It was actually 13 months in the end, sort of working in this company, taking my shoes off, getting into the ground, changing the way I moved, changing the way I worked. And it really changed the way I danced. And that's when I fell in love with contemporary dance. And then when I was ready to come back, instead of going back to the Australian Ballet, I veered off and I went back to Sydney Dance Company. And that's when I joined Sydney Dance Company for 7 years, because by then I'd fallen in love with contemporary.
So going back to the Australian Ballet Company, what was that like? And you became a soloist?
The Australian Ballet was great. I was really lucky. I don't know. It's really hard to be self-aware, isn't it? To sort of know what you were really like. You've only got this kind of image and this story that you tell yourself in your head over and over, and you keep trying to clarify it and think back and then go, hang on a sec, let's be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself. Were you really like that? And what were you really like? As opposed to some story where we all sort of pitch ourselves as the hero of our inner narrative. And it's like trying to get off that sort of hero narrative and see yourself as other characters might have seen you in that story. I had this weird kind of I was so anxious as a performer. I would virtually wet myself and my stomach would be in knots literally the night before until the day of a performance if I was doing a big performance. And I was one of those performers who had to always take myself away. I couldn't be around other energies. I couldn't be around other people. I've got a person in my head right now, and they were amazing. They were able to, it was like this alchemy of the soul. He was able to, in the dressing room, I could see him channel and change this nervous energy into this positive excitement. But it was it literally was like this magical alchemy and he was doing that consciously. And I was never able to do that. He was able to, and I could see him change it into this positive excitement. And I was like, wow, how did you do that? And it's something I've always thought about, because for me, it was just this knot and this tight and this doubt, self-doubt. And so it would force me to go over everything, every minute little detail over and over and over again. And I think it made me a better performer in lots of ways, because when I hit the stage, all of a sudden, all the doubt left. And it's like, okay, now I'm just in stage and I was in Zen mode. I was just so lost in it. And I would just hit Zen. And that was fantastic. And I found as a performer, if I didn't go through those doubts before, I would then have the doubts on the stage.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I learnt that became part of my process, that I actually had to go through all this trauma and this suffering before a show. And I'm not saying I had to do that. I'm saying that's what happened to me. And then I became used to it. And then I had to have it sort of go like that. But I don't know that it had to be like that. And I think if I talked to someone at the right time, we could have switched that. And maybe they could have taught me that alchemy to change that nervous energy into just a positive excitement. And then it would have worked even better for me, because I wouldn't have wasted so much energy. I just spent so much energy in before the show and just racked with self-doubt. So, but it was that kind of thing, like I said to you earlier, it was like I was this sort of ballsy, and people would have looked at me from outside and gone, oh my God, you just seem like you were so confident, like super confident, like overconfident, to be honest. Like, arrogant would be the word that people would have said. Arrogant and aloof is probably how a lot of people would have described me. Because I needed to separate myself, and then I would have this kind of, again, I had this mask that I was putting on because I did not want people to see the vulnerability. It's very primal, on the African savannah, animals do not show weakness. They don't show when they're injured. They don't show when they're sick, because if you do, you're the one that's going to get predated on by the lion. So there is something primal in us to sort of not show vulnerability, because we think that somebody is going to use it against us somehow, or it's going to take us down. And so my mask was this kind of aloofness, and as though I'm impervious, when I was anything but. I was so fragile at the time, and that's why I kept myself apart. And then I would hit the stage, then I had to live up to my kind of that persona that I'd created of confidence. I'd have to live up to that. And so on the stage, I would just hit it and go, and I was just in the zone. So it was a funny sort of thing, and it worked as a performer, but it was torturous. It's absolutely torturous. And like when I finished performing, I was so relieved, because I was just like, oh my God, I don't have to go through that anymore. And then I was able to find something more real and just, I don't know, just become me and be honest.
Amazing. I love that you can go back and analyze and see what worked, because there's so many performers out there, and I can definitely relate to some of your mindset stuff. For me, there was so much torture before going on stage. So from the Australian Ballet Company to Sydney Dance Company, did your mindset shift? Did it soften at all?
Probably. I mean, I can still remember Sydney Dance Company being exactly the same performer and going through that exact same process. But I probably softened some. I took some time off for about 6 months to do some musical theatre in the middle. I always found a way, when I was injured, So injury is what stopped me with my classical career, and that's what took me into contemporary. And then when I was in contemporary, I was about maybe 4 years in, and I started getting injuries, niggles and stuff. And I took 6 months off to go and do musical theatre. And just changing what you're doing can really help. First of all, it gives you a new perspective. You stop doing the same technique over and over and over again. And so you're able to keep going while healing some of the things that you need to heal. So it's kind of healing in itself, because you're also being fed in this new artistic way. So you're excited and you're inspired in a new way. So I always find that. And some people have asked me in the past, what is it about being able to adapt? Like, why can you go from classical to contemporary to musical theatre into acting, into like I love to sing as well. Like I love singing and playing guitar. Like, so
Wow.
what is it about all of those things? And there's a double-edged sword to this. So there's this really interesting thing. I think that if you define yourself as ballet dancer, then you're going to be, no, I'm a ballet dancer. And if I'm not doing ballet, then there's something missing in my life. But I never really defined myself as ballet dancer. And then if you go the next level under, it's dancer. I'm a dancer. And you go, if I do that, well, I can go into ballet dancing, I can go into contemporary, I can go into musical theatre, I can go into anything, but I'm dancing because I'm a dancer. That's what I am at my heart. I started in break dancing. I was just that guy on the dance floor when I was young, throwing my body around. So I'm a dancer. If you go lower than that, I'm just a performer. I'm a performer, and I love to perform. I love to get on stage and perform for people in some depth. That's my storytelling. I'm a storyteller. Yeah. Then you're an artist. And then when you're an artist, you can go, so underneath it, if you go a level deeper, I'm an artist. If you go a level deeper, I'm an explorer. And it doesn't matter what I'm doing, I'm just exploring. And so now I can go into business, or I can go into this, or I can go into this, because I'm an explorer. And if you go under a level under that, I'm just curious. And you just keep simplifying down. So instead of getting too self-identified with any one thing up here, which is quite peripheral, if you keep going down and find that who am I at the bottom of this? I'm just this curious person about life. I'm curious, and I love learning. I love learning new things. I love meeting new people. I love going to new places. And so I can then just sort of put myself into things. Now, there's a downside to this, of course, because it's very easy to then get distracted. And if you get distracted, it's very hard to become excellent at anything. So, because if you put all your eggs in one basket, as to be excellent at anything kind of usually demands to some degree, then you do have to self-identify. So what I would say to people is, yes, kind of self-identify because you know you want to be excellent and you're going to do it for a period of time, but don't let it become something that captures you and stunts your growth. Like, understand who you are at all these lower levels, what's driving you, what the need is underneath. For me, the need is curiosity. The need is to explore. And then that can express itself in so many sort of myriad pathways. And then you can choose, okay, this is a pathway I actually want to focus on because I want to become excellent at it.
Yeah.
I'm not defined by it. And if at some point it's not working for me, like really not working for me, I can pull out of it without losing my self-identity and without my self-identity collapsing in on itself and going, who am I? Who am I? I don't lose my self-identity when I stop dancing and stop performing, because that's not what was driving me, and I know what was driving me.
So my takeaway from what you've just said is there's definitely a lot of flexibility within your mindset, within your psyche. So there's expansiveness and led by curiosity. With regard to that, there would have to be a high level of self-trust.
Yeah. So that's an interesting one. And I guess there is, and I guess that goes back to the original kind of ballsiness I was talking about. I think it comes from my mum, actually. She's a bit like this, like that kind of just give it a go. Yeah. You'll work it out. You've probably got something in you, and right now you don't know how to make it work, and you don't know if it's going to work, and you don't know if you're going to be able to do it. But other people have done it and they've been successful. And while they might be better than you right now at that, there's no reason that they are somehow fundamentally better than you. Now, that's not always true, because some people just are fundamentally, Usain Bolt is probably just fundamentally set up better to run faster than other people. There are people with maths brains that I don't have. So there's a kind of a level of being a little bit self-aware that, yes, there are sort of some limitations, but there aren't so many limitations that you should stop yourself having a go at something. Like one of the things I always say to young people and to my own kids, there's two things I say. Instead of trying to find the job that you like, gravitate to the people, the kind of people you want to be around, the kind of people you want to share your life with, and then try to find the job that is going to suit that. And then the other thing is, when you're young, just have a go. Don't go, oh, that's just a dream and they're amazing and I could never be like that. Like, now is the time to go for it. Yeah. Now is the time to make mistakes. Now is the time to fall over flat on your face and then get back up, cry and get back into it and try again. When you're 30 and 40 and 50, it gets harder. Yeah. Well, it doesn't mean to say you can't, and you should, but it gets harder once you've got a mortgage and you might have family commitments and there's a dog at home. Whatever it is, it can get harder to take risks. It can get harder to immerse yourself. When you're young, just whatever that dream is, absolutely go for it. You have no idea. The world needs your uniqueness, but it doesn't necessarily want it. And there's a difference. And so it absolutely needs it. And the world doesn't even know it needs it sometimes. And it'll sometimes go, no, I don't want your uniqueness. We like the status quo. We like things the way they are. Please don't shake the tree. Please don't rock the boat. But it actually, when you do rock the boat and shake the tree, it goes, oh, wow, that was fantastic. I love that. That was so exciting. And I love what came out. And there's something new that we've never seen in the world. So the world needs your uniqueness, but it doesn't necessarily want it. And you have to live with that conundrum, accept that conundrum and go, I'm going to get rejected because the world doesn't always want it, but I'm going to keep pushing because whether it knows it or not, it needs it.
I have heard this quote said two different ways, but the same thing over the last couple of weeks. And I think I've needed to hear it for myself. The obstacle is the path.
The obstacle is the path.
What?
Yeah.
And it's your edge, the obstacle. And I've even personally had to go, with doing this podcast, face a few of my own fears. And then I heard that quote and it's like, no, that's actually what's making me unique. I just need to push through with that edge of talking about the things I want to talk about. And I was like, oh, yeah, the obstacle's the path. I was like, oh, okay.
That's much more succinct than my ramble.
No, I just think it's something to marinate on, because I never would have thought. I thought, well, if there's red lights, there's red lights. If there's green lights, then go, but it's more speaking to that internal fear of that part of you that wants to quit and give up and go, no, 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 that's actually the path you need. Like, Joseph Campbell's hero's journeys, this is your hero's journey to actually facing little inner fears, and that is the path.
Yeah, and I think you shouldn't assume that the world's going to make it easy for you. And you shouldn't assume that. And you shouldn't assume that they should think they should make it easy for you, because they're all living their lives and they've got their fears and their status quo that they might like, and they don't realize how your uniqueness is going, or your path is going to help them and shape them and make the world a better place or a more interesting place or whatever it is. So sometimes you have to got to fight for yourself. You got to fight for what you want, fight for what you believe in, and then, I don't know, see if it works, and maybe it will and maybe it won't, but at least you've had a go at it.
What's one big thing you've had to fight for?
What's one big thing that I've had to fight for? I don't know. You sort of fight for everything. I think everything, I don't know, asks something of you, demands something of you, sacrifice. And then you have to ask what is most important to you, and you have to work out what's most important to you, because there's always going to be a choice, and any choice is sacrifice. I'm giving up something, one potential pathway for another potential pathway. Who am I? What do I really need? What do I really want? So you've really got to be self-aware to know who you are, to then feel comfortable when you make that choice. Otherwise, you're always going to be second-guessing that choice, going, did I make the right choice? Did I make the right choice? Could I have gone this path? Should I have gone this path? And I think that's a debt to happiness and joy and contentment, because you're always choosing one path at the end of the day, and there are infinite pathways you could go. And if you continually think about all of the pathways as though you want infinite lives, then that's just a death for joy, because you're never going to be content and sort of happy and grateful, because you're always thinking grass is greener or what if, and I don't know.
Yeah. I want to ask a question, because I have a sizable German audience actually. And when I came over here and I was teaching at a ballet school, they were fascinated by my Australian accent, and they wouldn't stop talking about Dance Academy. So there's going to be some people literally falling over the fact that I'm interviewing you. One of the young teachers is flying out to Australia next month, and she's so excited to go where Dance Academy was filmed.
Well, Dance Academy was huge in Germany because it was actually German funded.
Oh,
It had
wow.
funding. It had funding from Germany, which is why I think it probably got such a good play in Germany as well, because it was partly funded by a German as well as the ABC, but it was a sort of co-production.
I didn't know that.
No, so I mean, you've only just reminded me. I hadn't thought about that ever until you just mentioned it.
Because of my audience over here, you're obligated to share a little bit of anything inside with what it was like at Dance Academy.
I had a really weird experience in Dance Academy because I just finished Dirty Dancing, the classic story on stage in LA. So I'd done almost 5 years, 1,500 shows in Australia and New Zealand for 2 years, on the West End in London for 2 years, and then a year traveling around the States. Started in Chicago, then we did Boston, then we did LA, and we finished in LA. We were supposed to go to Broadway and open it on Broadway, but it was 2008. The GFC hit. Everything collapsed. A third of all shows closed, and they put it to bed, and they were going to resurrect it. They've never resurrected it. They've never taken it to Broadway, which was a shame for all of the cast, because they had this incredible cast that they pulled together. But I'd just come off the back of doing 1,500 shows. I was absolutely exhausted, and I desperately wanted not to do theatre at the time, and I really wanted to get into film and television. So I spent 9 months in LA. I got an agent off the back of Dirty Dancing, which was fantastic, and I spent 9 months trying to get something going in LA. Basically, I was having a holiday mostly, but I was trying to get something going, but I was terrible. I'd done this one role for 1,500 shows, 8 shows a week. I got down to 7 shows a week for my last 3 months, but other than that, I'd done 8 shows a week. I was absolutely so spent, so exhausted. I couldn't. Everything that I did was through Johnny Castle. Everything that I did, every script I did, was somehow, it was through this lens of Johnny Castle in Dirty Dancing. It was so weird. I look back on it now and I just think, oh my God, it was such a bad time. And I had you either have one of those fantastic experiences in LA where, things go boom and it's amazing, or you have the experience of it all just went completely flat and you were a disaster. I had the latter. I was so terrible. I was doing the worst auditions. I was up for some really big roles and just absolutely terrible. I look back on it now and I'm just like, I just want to put my head in my hands. And again, I wish someone had just coached me and a little bit ahead of time and said, Joe, this is going to be really tough. You're coming off 1,500 shows. This is what you need to do to sort of prepare yourself. I didn't have anyone in, so that's why the support network I just think is so critical. Having people who understand this industry and can see it before you do what you need and what's important. Anyway, Dirty Dancing had finished. I auditioned for Dance Academy while in LA, and I sent my tape over and they said yes. And I was like, fantastic, this is awesome. I was flying back from LA to do 4 days of filming and they put all my scenes of Dance Academy in, and then I'd fly back because my family was in LA. And so for 9 months, I basically flew back and forth once a month for 4 days, filmed Dance Academy. And so I had this really weird experience on Dance Academy because I wasn't there like other people. I was literally just there for this really short period of time. They put all my scenes together, and then I only did season 1, put all my scenes together, and then I was out. And I'd never done film before, so I was completely new to that world. And that's a really different world again, and a completely different way of performing, which I love, but it's a whole new technique. And understanding that is a whole other level of performing. And I was so performative, if that makes sense. Yeah. Coming from this theatre background of 20 plus years, I was so performative, and you can't have any of that when you're acting, when you've got a camera. You have to know what your thoughts are and not try to do anything with your face. Don't try to perform it. Try to think it, like actually feel it. Just be in the feeling and be in the thought, and don't think about what your face is doing. Just be honest with the thought and the feeling, and your face will do what it needs, and your body will do what it needs to do if you're honest about the thought and the feeling. Now, I found out all of this much, much later, and it took me a long time to start working that out. But the biggest problem I had after so long and having that ballet body, that's held in that certain way, was how do you be normal? How do you just play a normal person when you're so used to just having this sort of prince-like French aristocracy given to you from, 1600s? How do you get off that technique? And that was a really tough one. That was really hard. Something I battled. That's probably one of my biggest battles, actually. And it's one of the reasons I actually took myself out of performing at all, because I just couldn't get past it. I really had to just go and I keep thinking, there is a possibility, might be very slim, but there is the possibility that I will go back to acting at some stage.
I reckon I got that feeling as you were talking. I don't think you're done, actually.
No, it's in the back of my head. It's left unfinished. It feels really unfinished in my soul. Like it feels unfinished. It feels like something I didn't work out. But I also knew I had to get out to work it out. Like I couldn't stay in it and be hitting my head against this brick wall. I couldn't keep bashing it the way I bashed at other things. And finally it would succumb to an act of will. I had to really withdraw out of it to work out what that was and to change my physicality, which is ironic because I just started doing taking ballet classes again. My wife dragged me back into a ballet class. It was actually pretty cool. But I hadn't done like a proper, like I taught ballet, teaching ballet, but I hadn't actually done ballet. But anyway, Dance Academy was fantastic. So to all those German audiences, it is a wonderful show. They did an incredible job. The writer was amazing. The producer, they've gone on to do other amazing things. And the cast, they were just a really lovely young cast.
And Joseph, you've created a platform. I'd love to know more.
Yeah, so this is created with Timothy Heathcote, who is also the founder of MDM Dancewear, and he co-founded it with me. We basically built this. This came as a consequence because I'm working with MDM Dancewear and been with them for 9 years, and Tim created the most wonderful thing with MDM Dancewear, him and his wife Simone. And basically it's founded upon this thing called a dance-based support that goes in the dance shoes. Yeah. And as a consequence of that, we started talking to physiotherapists and podiatrists and started to get to know their world. And as a consequence of that, we ended up at this thing called IADAMS, which is the International Association for Dance Medicine Science. Yeah. And the first one that we went to, the first annual conference, was in Histon in 2017 or 2016, I'm not sure. But we ended up going to their conferences in Montreal, their conferences in Helsinki, and then conferences in Limerick, and ones in Sydney and Melbourne that were like little smaller events. And we were just blown away by the incredible research that's being done in dance health. And we'd spent our careers in dance and didn't know any of this. And we were like, how could we have been so ignorant and have known so little, and realizing that if you could just get that information to the local dance studio, not just to pre-professionals and professionals, because that's where it's at now. It's gone, it's now it's getting into companies as a kind of a standard, and it's getting into sort of high-end places like high-end schools and sort of pre-professional places. But the local dance studio, I still think it's still a hard one to get that sort of, to just make dance health part of the cultural fabric, okay? Whether it's nutrition, whether it's mind and wellness, whether it's strength and conditioning, whether it's physiotherapy, whether it's understanding pre-point assessments and how important that is. And look, there's heaps of great information out there, and that's the truth. So there's on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, there's heaps of great information. But if you're young, a young teacher or a young student or a young, how do you know what's good? And because there's heaps of misinformation.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. There is misinformation.
Heaps of misinformation. It's not always malicious. It's just that sometimes it's old. It's stuff that people did 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and it worked for them. And so they think, oh yeah, this is what works. And that's not how good science works. Just because it worked for you doesn't mean to say that's going to be necessarily the best good general knowledge for other people. So if you're going to give good general knowledge on a platform, then that's basically what TLA was designed to do. We wanted to create something that was aesthetically, functionally, and financially accessible. So that was the thing. We wanted it not just to be for pre-professionals and, vocational. We wanted it to be something that every studio could have in their studio. Every dancer could access either as an individual $5.99 a month, or $250 for a studio, which for a year, and you can give it to everyone in your studio, which works out about $1 per student if you've got like 200 kids. So we just wanted something that was accessible. And so then we went around the world and we went, okay, we need to get a whole bunch of content creators. So we just went and started talking to people from just the USA, the UK. We've got someone in Germany, like just people everywhere, just trying to talk to them and say, does this sound interesting? We took a prototype version to IADMS in Limerick in 2022, and we met with 8 of the 11 board members and showed them, and they said, this is fantastic, because what they recognize is, yes, like so many people just have never even heard of IADMS. I'd never heard of IADMS. And yet they have this amazing conference where 400 people from around the world come, 4 days of just endless, got 5 different rooms going from 8 a.m. in the morning to 6 o'clock at night. Incredible dance health stuff. There's so much content, and it's just making it accessible, making it so that it's not too text heavy. Like a lot of websites are very text heavy, so it's very off-putting for kids. So we wanted something that was like Netflix-like, that felt playful, that you might just go there and then just start playing and just sort of just tuning into stuff and finding stuff, and I don't know, something that felt a bit more fun and playful. And
so what sort of education does the site provide? If I was, say, 15, what could I expect to learn?
It's incredibly diverse. There's physiotherapy on there from Lisa Howe, Sally Harrison, Jennifer Milner. You've got, I'm not even going to go into all the names, but there's nutrition on there, there's strength and conditioning on there, there's mind and wellness on there, there's dance for health on there. But you can also just go on there and get all your YAGP solos. There's 40 different podcasts you can access through there. So if you're just looking for a new podcast, this podcast is on there. You can go on there and just, you can access it, and it takes you to Spotify, so you don't play it through our site. It opens up into Spotify, but it means you can go on there and find something new and exciting and interesting. And so you can explore. There's short dance films on there. There's history on there. You can go and explore choreographers on there.
It's like a hub and a home for like a safe space, right? Like
safe space.
No misinformation. You've got
It's something that's being cared about, and just trying to make sure it's better than what you're going to get if you go over there. Something like ballet, for example. It's a really interesting genre, what's happening with ballet at the moment, because it's under a lot of pressure. This is a whole other conversation we could talk about probably. It's under a lot of pressure in a lot of Western countries, cultural pressure, financial pressure. There's lots of different reasons. Sport, female sport is absolutely smashing and going to smash. Dance in general, but ballet in particular, the rise of female sport, which is fantastic. It's a cultural plus, but it's going to have an impact on dance. But ballet is growing in other areas, Southeast Asia, South America, Africa, India. India is a massive hub for growing ballet, but they don't necessarily yet have the infrastructure in terms of the dance physios, dance-specific physios, nutrition-specific, mind and wellness-specific for dance. So it means we're creating something that will be nice and accessible for them as well. So that's the hope. That's the hope. That's the mission.
That's incredible. That's great. I know TikTok and Instagram are great, but I'm with you on the misinformation and just so many pictures of
Overstretched. Young kids up on point.
and then
Competition kids that are just whizzing.
Yes, and
Yeah,
then
they're
they're
just
seeing that, and that's their metric of success, and I'm like, "No, no, no, that's your metric of that's gonna be injury."
It's not and the problem is it's not a metric for understanding what is at the heart of dance, which is this consciously considered self-expression. That it's this way to, it's not about doing a trick. It's about the relationships. It's about connecting to yourself, connecting to others, connecting to the space, connecting to the music. It's about connection and collaboration. That doesn't mean there's no place for competition, because there is, and you're always competing against yourself. You're competing against the people in the room with you. But hopefully, if the foundation is collaboration and connection, then that competition becomes a really healthy form of competition. Whereas if competition is the foundation, then everything else becomes unhealthy, I think. So and then you're just trying to do a trick to get likes on Instagram because you're trying to feed something in you that needs that kind of recognition. Yeah. And then I think you've potentially lost, and like it's different for everyone. So I never like to generalize, but I just think there's something much more beautiful and deep in dance and, well, in the arts generally. And these sorts of things, it's so easy to get warped by the likes, isn't it?
Yep.
And by the recognition and the status that comes with that. It's very easy to distract you and warp you, and then maybe you get lost in the temptation of that. So
and getting a bit of judging work over here and in Australia as well, I can attest to, I understand that the whole tricks thing probably came in quite strong about 10 years ago, and I can just see it taking over so much of the art form that makes me quite sad. And it is an achievement to be able to do some of those things, but when it's overtaking a routine, I just think, well, we're not dancing anymore, are we?
That's exactly right. And this is the thing. Tricks have always been a part of dance. Look at ballet. The first person who did a double tour, that was a trick. The first person doing a grand jeté en tenant, that was a trick. A double soda bass, that was a trick. Fouettes, the first person who did fouettes, it was a trick. The first person who, when it first starts, it's a trick. But if Swan Lake was all just fouettes and double tours, you'd go, hang on a second. Yeah. That's not dance. But so if you take the trick, there's nothing wrong with the tricks. There's nothing wrong with the physicality and learning those things. That can be fantastic. But it's taking them and going, if you're doing it for the trick for trick's sake, that's the problem. If you're doing it because it's part of a story and you can find a way of integrating that trick into a story so that it enlivens that story and makes that person sit up and take notice and creates an accent or a punctuation to your story, then they're fantastic. So it's about the storytelling. And are you a storyteller at the heart of it? Because if you are, then you'll understand the tricks can be a really positive thing, because you need things to sometimes wake up an audience or get them to see something in a different way. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. Just it's always the same, isn't it? It's how it's used. It's not the actual
but
trick.
it's nice to iterate that, especially for get some younger choreographers out there. So we've come to an end of our wonderful interview, and I have thoroughly enjoyed picking your brain. You have given so much to us. I'm so grateful. But I thought if I could ask one final question, if there's something you could offer some Josef Brown wisdom to younger teachers, anything that just comes to mind.
Teaching it's its own craft, for starters. So just because you're a good dancer does not make you a good teacher. Being a good teacher is a passion. I look back at the teachers that I had. There's a teacher who's just retired from teaching, John Byrne. He was one of my very first teachers. And he was quintessential in sort of giving me the career that I had, because he was exacting. He was disciplined. You were there on time. You turned up on time. You did the class. You worked. But oh my God, it was always joyous. He always found a way of taking the serious and making it joyous. And I just think that was just so clever, because you want it to be serious. But at the end of the day, and I guess the most important thing he did as a teacher, which I think I try to do, is you want to make the motivation not something that you're having to push onto the student, but you want it to be something that builds and grows inside them, so that they're the ones driving it. They're driving you harder. They're driving themselves harder than you would ever drive them. His way of teaching awoke something in me that meant no one was going to have to push me harder than I pushed me, because he awoke something in me that just went, oh my God, I love this world. I want to be a part of this world. I want to explore this world. And that's truly such a gift. And it's a very hard one as a teacher, but I think if you don't even know that's the thing that you should be aiming for, then it's hard. So that's the reason I articulate it now, because I think rather than trying to just push kids like I have to push you to make you be your best, to reach your potential. No, you have to find a way to get them to be the person that's driving it, to be them that's the person pushing. So they're pushing you to be there for them. They're pushing you to say, get in the room earlier. I want more.
Yeah.
Then you've done your job, because it doesn't matter whether you're there or not. They're going to find, and they're going to go off and find the right teachers and find the right companies and because now they're just completely self-motivated. And that's, what more can you give to someone than independence and autonomy? Like, that's the greatest gift, that they don't need you.
That's beautiful. How special. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Kate. It's been such a joy having a chat and having to bring all of this out and have to think about it. So thank you.